Hey everyone, this is Tony Holbein. You are listening to The Revenue Formula with Mikkel and Tony. In today's episode, we are talking about the top go-to-market trends for 2025. And spoiler alert, it's not just AI. Enjoy. Before we jump into the show, today's episode is brought to you by Fullcast, the only AI-powered platform that streamlines your entire sales cycle from plan to pay. Customers report up to 80% cost savings, 20% growth in pipeline, and 30% boost in RevOps efficiency. With modules like territory and quota management, routing, and capacity planning, Fullcast adapts to your unique needs, whether you need one solution or an all-in-one platform. Visit fullcast.com, book a demo, and mention the Revenue Formula podcast to unlock an exclusive premium gift just for listeners. And now, enjoy the show.
So what the listener doesn't know is we're recording not together in the same room. We used to be able to hear the intro music. Now we can't for technical reasons. And just meanwhile, a weather report. It is incredibly dark and gray this morning. It's raining. It could not get more boring this morning. But we have a not so boring topic we're gonna at least hop into today, which is the go-to-market trends.
Yeah, so for the probably very sad and weird and shitty weather moments that you're gonna have between Christmas and New Year's, when you're overstuffed from eating all the food with maybe your family, and you're just annoyed about that at some point, and then you don't have anything to do until New Year's. This podcast might cheer you up and talk.
Exactly.
What are we gonna talk about today again? I forgot.
No, exactly. So I literally said it 2 seconds ago, by the way, but we're going to hop into the trends that we at least see coming in 2025. It's not necessarily that we're expert in every single subject, but the thing is, we've talked with so many folks as of late as we've been planning out, let's say, the next wave of guests. So just aired is Carl Poya on how AI is transforming pricing. We had Jakob van der Kooi on how AI is taking away your job. And there's a lot of change happening. And we kind of wanted to curate some of the things that we've heard from others, but also our own opinions to kind of prepare you for the coming year. And I think the top of mind thing everyone has and just wants to ask straight off the cuff is, will we see more growth next year?
Yeah. Will we see more growth? So
please make it return.
The thing is, a lot of people on the planet, like in the economy, had a fantastic year. Like an absolutely fantastic year.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
I posted this recently, we saw S&P 500 is up 27%.
Yeah.
27%. That's absolutely outrageous. And, these parts of the economy doing fantastically well.
Yeah.
And then we kind of see other parts of the economy, especially SaaS, just not doing great, right? And then you have this whole flip over. It's like, wait a minute. There's, Klaviyo went IPO, there's Doximity, there's Toast, there's, Service Titan kind of recently. All of those companies, they just went public and they're growing really well and kind of they're SaaS companies. So what's different from them? The difference is they're not selling to SaaS. That's the difference. Klaviyo's e-commerce, Doximity is like for doctors and hospitals and something like this. Service Titan is for plumbers and carpenters and those kind of folks. Toast is restaurants. I'm forgetting someone. And those are the, everyone but SaaS is doing absolutely phenomenally well. The problem is with most SaaS companies is we're selling to other SaaS companies, and that basically doesn't work right now. It hasn't been working last year, hasn't been working the year before. And, if this is any prediction, probably still won't work next year. I think, that thing's still not going to pick up next year.
No. So if your ICP is B2B SaaS companies, you might want to revisit that. I think it's also interesting. You and I had a conversation recently about what does it take to build great software as in a succeeding company. And it's like, well, if it is mission critical software, such as, your accounting system or your email system or your CRM, then you have justification to exist. But there's probably also a bunch of companies that aren't at that level, which makes it incredibly difficult. So I think it's also a weird time. Like we're seeing a bunch of public companies beat their quarterly earnings targets. Yes. Sana jumped like 40% on beating basically the target. And I think probably next year outlooks will, it's crazy. And basically outlooks will probably start being lifted a little bit more. So yeah, I think it's also one of the things you and I discussed was the whole, when people talk about will growth return, I think there's this hope of maybe it's going to be as it was in 2021. You know, the hey days of SaaS when it was just crazy growth. Are we going to come back to that ever, you feel?
No, I think this was an outlier. I think that was simply what it was. We're back to kind of exactly where we were before that outlier occurred. We've now been pretty stable at exactly that level. And I think that's fine. I think there's a little bit of a depression still around public markets being able to, you know, accommodate folks that want to go public or accommodate folks that want to, you know, exit into a public company. That will probably soften and we will see some of that kind of go better. But I don't think we will go back to a time where every SaaS company is overly flush with cash, which they then spend on their friendly other SaaS companies, et cetera, which then kind of build up this hype, right? Because the 2021 times that we saw, those were not only fake revenue numbers. I mean, people really sold a lot more and kind of a lot faster, and there was not really a reason why this should slow down. But what we didn't know back then is that big part of that growth was other SaaS companies, kind of was the echo chamber, right? And once that crumbled, once that amount of cash kind of dried up, that's then basically what created this thing. And which made it such a weird situation until we kind of, realized that that's actually what it is, because all the companies that didn't sell to SaaS kept doing fantastically well. Kind of, they kept growing and so forth, right? So I think if there's any prediction for next year, I think SaaS companies will stay as they are. They will keep buying as they are right now, which is not much. It's decent. It's okay. It's kind of actually probably adequate for their size. That's how you need to see it. We will see AI companies blasting ever further forward and kind of through the roof and kind of doing all kinds of crazy stuff, right? And again, right, who's the predominant buyer for AI companies? Well, it's kind of big enterprises also, right? It's not just the small SaaS company wants to tweak a little bit here and there. I mean, we see some of that as well. But when you, for example, look at 11 Axis Growth, right? I know they sold a lot of stuff into just the Mittelstand in Germany, right? Kind of they sold into the mid-market in Germany, not only to kind of every SaaS company that has an SDR team, but to kind of normal companies. Yeah. And that is the target that you need to try and hit. Yeah. Normal companies, mid-sized up until enterprise, they both have still budgets, they both want to spend money, and they're interested in this AI thing and trying to figure out how that can maybe convert how they're operating right now. So that part of the economy and of the industry will probably keep growing like a lot.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think the other question that probably lingers as well is what's the hiring situation going to look like for a lot of folks, right? And I think you and I discussed this before hitting record. Like, everyone knows certain departments like marketing, they're being cut. They have been cut, and they are probably also going to get cut more just because of the amount of technology and how this whole go-to-market and growth is panning out. That's just how it is. Mm-hmm. But there's a kind of, I would say, a counterintuitive thing happening right now that you and I have read from Sequoia.
Yes. So this kind of raised a couple of eyebrows when we saw this. And actually, this was an article from Sequoia on the heels of Salesforce announcing that they're going to hire, I think, 1,000 sales reps, something like that. And this was already like, wait a minute, they're hiring 1,000 sales reps to sell the AI sales solution that's replacing sales reps. Kind of, what is it now? Like, do we need more? Do we need fewer? I mean, I'm confused now, right?
Are we selling snake oil?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like literally going to be the question there.
Yeah, but it's snakes selling snake oil.
That's true.
It's super weird.
Hey, as long as they get a mouse commission, then who cares?
Okay, we solved it. No, so the thing is, and this also comes through in the paper, as I just mentioned, AI companies will keep growing, and lots of that sales process will still be managed by salespeople. There are other parts of the sales funnel, like SDRs and maybe some disco calls or whatever. Increasingly so will be taken over. But selling $1 million ticket, which isn't something out of the ordinary for Salesforce, let's just be honest, that's not going to be replaced by an AI agent anytime soon. Like, for a long time probably, right? Because like, why would we? It's like, it doesn't make any sense, right? So for those tickets, obviously you need salespeople to sell them. And Salesforce is seeing tremendous demand there, actually. I think they had something crazy like 2 trillion actions completed or something like that. They announced a crazy milestone, I think a quarter after the released Agentforce. So they're seeing this thing working out, right? And basically in order to satisfy that demand, Salesforce in particular, but the journey as a whole, will probably, they will probably get in a bunch of salespeople in order to kind of meet that demand, right?
Yeah.
So there will be a spike for the sales folks. As some of those companies grow, obviously they will hire as well in order to create that scaffolding in order to support the organization. But I think there won't be any particular spike in another part of the organization. There will be many areas where maybe those organizations don't need so many folks, right?
Yeah.
For example, Benioff itself, in a recent podcast, I actually talked about how 2025 will be the first year ever where they're going to be staying flat on developers. And it's not like a cost-cutting exercise and, all kinds of... No, it's, all the AI stuff that we brought in, we actually don't need to get more developers, actually.
They all got Cursor and they got twice as productive.
Yeah, we can.
So,
we can
we
we can hit our targets just with the same. And someone did the math, funky math, and they were coming up with something like $700 million. It's a big company, Salesforce. That alone, by them not hiring more folks next year in the development department, it's going to save them $700 million, right?
Yeah.
And that will, they're hiring a bunch of sales folks, but no one in development. Like that will give you a clue how the rest of the market is probably also going to shape up.
Yeah. But so it's so funny, like the way they phrased it was like, because of AI, we'll have more salespeople, which is counterintuitive because you have AI SDRs and all these things promising you that you need fewer sales reps. I think on the other hand, what you will see as well driving the growth of hiring sales folks is certain companies where the unit economics didn't make sense for them to have salespeople will actually start working out so they can have salespeople, which is going to be a really interesting development to see that someone can sell a software license that's maybe $500 a month or something to that end. But because the seller is so hyper efficient, you know what? It can totally work out. It can totally work out. And I think that is also going to be interesting to kind of see what kind of shifts happen there to the motions that now make sense to operate. So I think, that's definitely one of the other predictions, trends we'll see going into the new year. Since we're on the topic of AI, one of the things for a previous episode we found that was super curious was implementing AI is the number one priority folks have out there, right? This is from I believe a HubSpot State of Sales 2024. So this year, it was the number one priority, which makes sense. But guess what the number one challenge was? Implementing AI. And what you and I have discussed is 2025 going to be the year when we see AI agencies rising?
So I think this is exactly what's going to happen. So we've seen for the last 2 years, the companies really making money with the AI boom, like an NVIDIA, OpenAI aside, were actually Capgemini, Accenture, BCG, Bain & Co., and McKinsey.
Yeah. All the AI experts.
All the AI first kind of really cutting edge have been around since 1.5 years kind of companies. They're basically been making most of the money in the market in terms of AI. And jokes aside, I think that trend is going to continue, right? When I rattle off those 4 or 5 big names, it's obviously some of them do the strategy stuff only. They just come in, do a slide deck, and it's like, no, you should totally do AI. Or some of them are also doing some of the implementation work, right? Yeah. And what I think is going to happen, we will see a lot more of agencies, consultancies around implementing AI popping up. Right? I think we will see a lot more of that. And I don't mean this in a way of there are a bunch of technical agencies out there that help you, build your, AI strategy and code it and stuff into the product. And I'm not talking about this. I'm talking about, think about all those RevOps agencies or go-to-market consultants, kind of all those kind of folks, maybe even the same ones, I think they will rebrand into I can help you implement AI into your go-to-market, into your whatever you choose, right?
Yeah.
I think there will be a massive wave. I think we've seen some of this already with all of those Clay agencies. There's kind of, HubSpot Clay agencies, kind of the same idea. And I think their next big horse that they're going to all be jumping on is like, hey, don't you also want to have AI in your go-to-market? And everyone says, yes, because, Jocko said so, Chris Walker said so, and maybe, the revenue formula said so too. But we're struggling with it. And I think there will be a big swath of people jumping on that problem because it's a real problem that needs to get solved.
I think it's also especially going to happen because there's going to be a lot of folks who have been probably dragging their feet at implementing some kind of AI assisted seller or something down those lines, even could be for marketing purposes. And the reason they've been dragging their feet is they've seen all the bad examples, right? They've seen those folks who initially implemented it in a terrible way, spammed the market, and basically killed any demand for their software ever because it was just terrible outreach, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of folks, they're excited about what the technology promises, but they worry about the downside. So they need kind of experts to come in and help build out those safeguards so they don't screw up themselves, right? So I think that's one side. And the other is a bunch of these solutions will be priced out on basically the tasks they perform, right? So it's very much almost a consumption-based pricing. And what that triggers is, are we going to get a massive bill from this company next quarter? So there will also be a need to kind of how can we control the costs of all the prompts or the AI credits we're using, right? So I think those two combined, they're going to create an additional need for having those experts to support organizations.
And I think the flip side of that coin, kind of when people go, should we outsource, should we insource? The insourcing solution will actually be something more and more folks are also now calling go-to-market engineers, GTM engineers. And it's actually pretty interesting, right? Kind of in our journey at Growblocks, we actually arrived at the same point. The GTM engineer wasn't born yet. It was still like revenue operations kind of folks. But when we were looking for first SDR, basically, it was clear to us that, hey, it needs not only be someone that can pick up the phone, but also needs to be someone that can build the machine around it. And I'm not saying kind of, the hiring plan and the compensation plan. No, kind of how are all the different pieces wired together? How are we actually implementing the newest AI technology in order to make this super smooth and kind of reach people in different ways? And we ended up hiring a fantastic guy, David Kubler. I think he found a job already, so he's off the market. But he basically became our go-to-market engineer without us knowing it. And he had a RevOps background and a sales background. Yeah. And I think that's the kind of setup you will want to have for, adding, creating this internal AI go-to-market thing that you're thinking about. Because really that person needs to have two different skill sets. One is obviously, understands the technical side, be excited by the whole AI thing. Yeah. But number two, needs to kind of have walked in those shoes. I think someone was saying the other day, the lines between operations and execution starting to blur in that role, right? Because both you're buying and implementing tools, which is squarely like, oh, you're revenue operations now. But then at the same time, they're kind of sending there, drafting the messages, maybe even recording a video, kind of doing the sequences, running this stuff, booking meetings. And then it's like, oh, wait a minute, that's not RevOps, that's something else. And in order for someone to really nail that, I think they need to have frontline experience. And I think another example where we've seen this in the past is basically in marketing. You've seen a lot of folks in performance marketing particularly that basically needed to understand not only the numbers part and how this whole PPC works and the networks and so forth, but also, well, what is triggering what reaction with my prospects, with my audience? What do I want to put in front of them? How much do I want to pay for that to get what return of investment? And really running this as a lab and experimenting and testing and improving. That could not never be only someone that only looks at the numbers. They also had to understand a little bit how the audience works. And I think the same thing you will see for sales and CS and some parts of marketing soon too, actually. So that will be kind of a new breed of folks I think you need to either nurture or hire or find or steal from agencies that probably going to label themselves as go-to-market engineers.
I think this also was a super interesting conversation you and I had off air at one point, which is, hey, who's going to spearhead the implementation of the AI strategy? And we're like, hey, I just don't see anyone in RevOps coming to marketing and telling me how we should implement AI, because they don't understand the different tasks being performed. Like, conceptually, sure, they might have an idea of what is actually going on, but think about that demand gen person. There's so much, tacit knowledge he or she will have, that I think the true winners will be those who actually understand the field and then understand some of the technological components, which for us, at least you and I in this conversation, is the go-to-market engineer.
Yeah.
That's the person who can say, hey, actually, you know what? We're going to stitch these 4 technologies together. Then we're going to have AI. And what it'll do is it'll spit out, because we're running 500 ads on Google, it's going to spit out 500 new versions once a week, so we can kind of test and optimize from there, right?
Yeah, and it's like also, where there's a problem in this part of the funnel, the conversion rate isn't working out. You kind of need to work on. So basically, really merging this art and science piece of each of these roles a little bit more together, right? And some wonderful things happen then, because for them to use their own data to make better decisions, they need to make sure they have clean data. So guess what? They're kind of actually caring about the CRM setup and how these all things work. And, is the data there clean, and can we use it, and can we repurpose it, and so forth. And you're starting to have basically someone that, cares about it, but also basically sets up the foundations. We talked about this a lot on the show, that people with shitty data, shitty processes, that, just slapping AI on top is not going to help you.
No.
So you need to kind of build this up from the base, in the right way. And those kind of hybrid folks that I think will probably, they will see a surge in 2025. Those hybrid folks kind of combine those things and actually solve those problems from the bottom up, right? So, I don't want to say I'm excited about it, but I think that's totally what's going to happen. How is that going to interplay with revenue operations? I don't quite know yet. We'll do an episode on this, later. But there's some really interesting stuff happening here.
Yeah, probably they're gonna take some work away from revenue operations that they really wanted to do, and then it's time for some introspection. Sorry, I just put out my initial opinion for that episode. I think the other thing we've discussed is there's gonna be a new breed of companies.
Yeah,
there's gonna be a new breed of companies. We'll start seeing more and more and more, and it's gonna be a company around 20 people. And what's gonna be special about them is they're gonna outgrow the companies with maybe 200 people. And they're going to do so by a lot.
So, picture this. You really have 2 companies, same size in terms of ARR, but one company is 20 people and the other company is 200 people. And I think we will start to see the first examples of that. Whether or not that's exactly the same split, right? But we will see companies that are similar in revenue size, but are fundamentally different in their cost basis and how they're running the show, right? And what we will also see is that those smaller teams will clearly outperform the other teams. And this is not like a financial thing of like, oh, they can raise and then, they can spend more CAC to acquire whatever. No, it's nothing to do with that. They will just simply be out operating, out executing, out competing the other team, right? So how can that be, So number one, the team of 20, in order to get to the 20 million, they will have to, been able to set up their company in a way where they actually can already start using some of those AI agents in some shape or form, right? It will have to be the case. Otherwise, you will not get to that disparity between those 2 organizations, right? Yeah. And what then happens is a pretty crazy growth loop, right? Because people are currently only thinking about, AI will help me save money. But I think what's also starting to become more and more clear, AI will also help you to make money. It will, will move in both directions at the same time, right? The saving side is pretty clear. It's like, okay, don't need Mickle anymore. I can do this, without that salary. But these, increasing your revenue side is actually coming from a perspective of, well, let's just say you have AI reps having conversations with your prospects. And, they will have a playbook that they're executing, but then they will also keep learning across 20, 30, 40 conversations happening per day, across all the different agents, across all the different prospects you're talking to. They will start experimenting and seeing where they're actually consistently getting better results. And then they will the next day roll this out to everyone else, or whatever, to all the other agents in the network. And then they will kind of learn again. And then they will find something that works. And then they will roll it out again. And the best thing is those AI agents, they will not, leave the company. They won't ask for a pay raise. They won't forget. Yeah. Like, oh yeah, you told me yesterday, but I forgot. I had a really good night out. Those things will just not happen, right? So you basically, at this level, will have a much more robust and I would argue scalable infrastructure in place compared to organization with 200 people with like 40 sales reps and 10 managers, and then maybe they have a performance review once a year, and maybe there's a sales performance coach that screams into the void and nothing changes, and battle cards that never get read. And so it's like you have all of those right now seemingly archaic problems that will be sitting with this one company but not with the other, right? And this is just one example of all the different ways and shape and forms that this small organization will be able to leverage AI in order to kind of accelerate more. And we haven't even talked about the benefits of having 20 people versus 200 people, just the sheer size.
Yeah. So, and actually it's funny you said that, because let's just take an example. Let's say next year, that's the year where the vendors finally figure out how to make these AI SDRs work. They book meetings, those meetings turns into deals. Let's say that it just works, right? You have these two companies. One has 200 people. They're going to have a bunch of SDRs there versus the other one. They now need to make a painful decision of replacing those SDRs with AI. How are they going to do it? Maybe they're going to run a POC first. That takes time to prove that it works. Then they negotiate, find the right vendor. They need to do stakeholder management internally. It needs to go through legal, InfoSec. Like there's just so many steps to take to make a very simple and obvious decision to implement a technology that works, right? So they will be slower. And I think to your point, we discussed this in a previous episode. If you're 20 people, you don't have like a CRO, CFO where they need to discuss budget and move things around or like do some internal politicking and stuff like that. It's just a whole lot easier. Yeah. If you're 20 people, the CEO will know what's happening in the organization. They will have lunch together and probably be able to decide over a casual lunch to like, yeah, go for it, buy that thing. That's totally fine, right? So it's definitely different. It's definitely different.
And here again, right? It's really, people need to ask themselves a question: do I want to be the 20 people organization, or do I want to be the 200 people organization? Or what am I right now? Am I going to be the one that's getting disrupted by a shitty team we made fun of because on LinkedIn we only see their like LinkedIn insights, 20 people, what a piece of shit is that? And then suddenly, boom, they kind of explode on the side. Right?
But it used to be the flex, the trust sign. Yeah. Hey, we raised a lot of money. We hired a lot of people. It's like when you ask someone what startup they worked at, it's like, oh, we're from this company. We're 500 people. It's like, no, that's
I talked to a kind of a bootstrap founder the other day, and he's like, I don't know, 4 or 5 million in AR or 10 million. I forgot something totally fucking serious. And he was like, one of the most encouraging kind of things is actually when you go to those founder meetups or kind of parties around this, and then they ask you like, how many employees do you have? Because that's the number everyone that your mom asks you. Kind of how big is the company? 4 people, 500 people. It's a different and this is how everyone counts, right? And then the founder was like, well, we have 10, 12 people or something. They were close to the $1 million benchmark per FTE, and so it's like, okay, you're just starting out. That's really cool. Yeah. And the other founder had maybe raised 20 million and was maybe at 5 million, but had like a 100 people team. And it's like, it's very clear who's the loser in this conversation, but it's not clear to everyone else, right? Yeah. And I think that will also change a little bit. I think people will start respecting small teams more and not immediately equate 10 people with a loser team, and will actually kind of start to think like, okay, well, 10 people, but how much money do you make per FTE? Or what other benchmark they might ask, and I think that will change.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, by the way, so this is dealing with perception, and that's kind of the last prediction trend that we have, kind of also inspired from our chat with Kyle Poya when we talked about how AI is transforming pricing. Yes. What has happened with all this new technology is now everyone is a designer. Like, forget about Canva. Canva was fine Now you have Midjourney. You can actually create awesome things there fairly easily. You can create something, a stock photo that's way better than a stock photo. So the average brand in terms of quality will be able to get lifted in quite a bit. So how do you stand out in this noise? How do you stand out if everyone can use AI to create visuals or craft copy? It's really with the personality.
Yeah. Instead of everything needs to be beautiful, everything needs to be ugly, probably. You need to jump to the other side of the spectrum. No, but I think you're right. I think personality, whatever that means, I think that will need to start to play a much bigger and bigger role in building the brand, building awareness, and so forth. I think slapping real people's pictures on things, making things feel a little bit more scrappy, not fully polished, right? Everything that's not 4K video will be like, oh, okay, that probably is real. That probably took time now, and instead of kind of the flip side of it. And can you instruct those tools to be scrappy? Sure, you can probably have some kind of freaking filter and so forth.
Yeah.
But I guess, people out there kind of catching my drift. I think the polished surface and the polished brand will even more so blend in with the background and the background noise. Then stuff that's a bit edgy stands out. How can you create edgy? There are different ways around this. Personality is one. We talked about ugliness. An ugly brand.
Check out Link's cast, by the way.
Yeah.
This is crazy.
I didn't see that. But anyway, kind of that creates edginess, right? And kind of, remember those guys, that an ugly logo or whatever it might be, right? And I think we will see a trend more and more in that direction where people are trying to be on purpose completely out there. And I think it's going to be good. I think it's going to be good for them.
I think it's also like there's one exercise, I forget who created that exercise or mentioned as an example, but it's like, okay, imagine your brand now opens a hotel. What does that experience look like? If we were to say that brand was Nike, I think we'd have a pretty good idea of what it looked like. There'd be like basketball hoops in the lobby and, the running tracks on the floor. But some other brands, you just go, you know what, I don't know. It'll have some catchy slogans on the wall and be like very corporate-y feely, but I'm not sure. It's just gonna be another hotel, isn't it? Right? And I think that's like the point where you think about a strong contrast is like, what's his name? Virgin Airlines.
Richard Branson. Thank you.
Doing a bet with a competing airline where the loser has to wear a female stewardess outfit and serve drinks. Right? It's just. That is personality. That is very different. And there's a lot of elements you can choose to play with. I think if you really want to stand out, just make sure that not everything you do is originating from AI. By all means, you can use it, but you got to think about what the outcome at the end of the day is.
Absolutely.
So that's like, I think, all of our trends, predictions that we've had planned out, none of them planned by AI, by the way. None of them. This is all you and I going into our duo echo chamber and just, hey, what is controversial? What can we talk about here?
Yeah, but also I think what we do believe in, right? So I mean,
for sure.
I like Chris Walker's line with like, he is right, he's just not always right on timing. So he said his predictions from like 5 years ago, they came true last year, but not 4 years ago. So I think this stuff is gonna happen. I'm sorry, folks, if you don't like it, don't shoot the messenger. But I think these things are going to happen, and I hope it informs maybe how you make decisions going forward, and hope it informs to shape your mindset and looking at your organization, whether or not that's a small team of 10 because you're only owning that many, or it's you're owning bigger parts of the organization, and really kind of chilling yourself and be like, hey, there is stuff fundamentally changing out there, and I think we need to make sure we adapt, because otherwise we're going to be a roadkill. That's really the realization here. But folks, I hope you liked it. I hope you're going to have a wonderful New Year's and a wonderful 2025. Thank you so much for sticking with us and kind of listening. If you haven't already, hit subscribe, follow, all of these things. The buttons appearing everywhere.
Point down. They're going to be down, Tony.
And if you think that was helpful, send it to a friend of yours and be like, hey, you should really listen to those two folks talking about 2025 trends, because that was super valuable. Thank you, Mikkel. Thank you, everyone else, for listening, and have a fantastic day. Bye-bye.
Bye.